Welcome. As the title may have suggested, today we'll be catching the legend on day 1. Obviously impossible and a legitimate glitchless playthrough, we'll be utilizing some bugs and exploits found on the 1.5.6 mobile patch in order to accomplish this goal. Enjoy. To start, there are 3 pretty self-evident roadblocks in trying to catch the legend on the first day. The first is that it's not the right weather, the legend having rain as one of its catch requirements. The second is that we don't even have a fishing rod, nor any real way to get one. Willie is out of town on a fishing trip on the first, and one traditionally reads his letter and collects their fishing rod after they receive the mail on the second. Lastly, we don't meet the minimum fishing level to catch the legend, requiring level 10 fishing to reel it in the first place. Starting at the top, the first issue of weather is the easiest to deal with. The first 4 days always have the same predetermined weather, with the first always being sunny, even if we could somehow use a rain totem or step minute prior to the first day. That being said, an inability to change the weather doesn't stop us from circumnavigating the issue in its entirety through the use of magic bait. Unfortunately inescapable, this will be our first exploit and single use of item IDs, naming our character brackets 908 to spawn one in when meeting Robin and Lewis in the introduction cutscene. The second issue of not having a rod on the first day is actually solved in much the same way, but instead of spawning in an item, something that's impossible for the rod on 1.5, we're going to do something a bit more interesting. Name injecting the check for having read a piece of mail, the invitation Willie sends on day 2, by using this string. Our name is already a bit too long from the bait ID to fit both though, and the farm name, which is also mentioned in the introduction cutscene, can only be 9 characters in length. So instead, we'll pop it in as our favorite thing, and then put %favorite as our farm name, which will read out our favorite thing when it's self-read. The last issue of our abysmally low fishing level will be solved through a duo of exploits utilizing save states, a mobile exclusive feature. I'll cover these when we get to them, but they require the seed 6284, or another seed which fits the single criteria I'll mention later, in order to be used the way that I want them to be used. Now entering the file, we have to watch through the opening cutscene in order for the preparations we made to actually trigger. I've skipped through the first portion for viewing pleasure, but it's a wonderful 3 minutes and 20 seconds long for anyone who is wondering. Going through the dialogue in the valley portion of the introduction at 3 times speed, you'll see us pick up 2 magic bait as our name was read by Robin and then by Lewis. At the same time, by reading out the farm name, %favorite, Robin actually read out our favorite thing, Willie's mail check intended for day 2. Skipping the rest of the introduction, the reading of the mail check may not have seemed to have done anything immediately, our mailbox still being visibly empty as we go outside. However, the injection wasn't actually for the mail itself, but rather the check from reading the mail, which can be seen by the letter already being in our collection tab. As we continue to speed on over to town, I'll give some insight into one of the glitches that'll get us both fishing levels and the money for the fiberglass rod, abusing save states for trash. Our seed 6284 is important for this alone, the trash can at the saloon dropping a fish taco. As you can see in the gameplay, I can obtain multiple of these by saving and re-entering the file, which resets the content of each trash can. A bit of an unfun fact is that while routing this run, I was using another seed that gives a day 1 fish taco dish of the day, but had completely forgotten that the 13 steps during the introduction cutscene count towards the initial day 1 step count, something which partially determines the dish of the day, and which is assumed to be 0 in the first seed, which is the case if one skips the introduction cutscene. So I want to give a quick thanks to Alexa for helping me find a new seed accounting for those first steps. With the fish tacos we'll need in hand, all we have to do now is wait until the general store opens so I can sell 3 of them to Pierre for 1500 G, which will be more than enough to buy the fiberglass rod when paired with our 500 G starting cash. Heading down to the beach will confront us with a pretty illegal looking day 1 rod cutscene, which can safely be skipped, and allows us entry into the now unlocked fish shop. When we enter, there's nobody behind the counter however, and the shop is entirely uninteractable. But this can be solved simply by saving, re-entering the file, and then catching any fish. While this does allow us to interact with the shop, even if we use the fish taco to be at level 2 fishing, the fiberglass rod's level 2 purchase requirement can't be fulfilled with buffs in this version, so we'll need to properly fish for the shop unlock. To more quickly gain XP while fishing, we'll employ the second use of save states, buff stacking, something you can see me doing right now, and which will help us in catching the legend later too. By creating a save state with an active buff, then re-entering the save file, the active buff is saved on our player without taking up a buff slot for the remainder of the day, allowing us to eat another buff food again and stack the buffs repeatedly, so long as time permits it of course. The larger fishing bar enables us to get more fishing XP with easier perfect catches now, and later on, as the skill requirement for the legend doesn't discriminate between actual levels and buff levels, we'll be able to bypass the legend's level 10 restriction when only having an actual fishing level of 2. With level 2 fishing, we can now buy the fiberglass rod and equip the magic bait we got during the introduction cutscene. With our preparations for each of the 3 roadblocks complete, the magic bait to avoid weather, name ejection and fishing to get the rod, and buff stacking for level 10, the only thing remaining is to actually catch the legend, so we'll run up to the mountain lake and begin attempts. Right before casting, creating a save state allows us to repeat casts without resetting the whole day, but the legend bit first try anyway. While I spend actually forever catching this fish, I want to give a big thanks again to Alexa for the new seed, and also to Zachary on the Do Crew Discord for advice on most of the name injection for this run. It wouldn't have been nearly as enjoyable without the help, so please check out his Twitch channel linked in the description. And that's the legend caught on day 1. Subscribe if you enjoyed it, or for one of my next videos, where we'll be completing the community center within the first spring. Stay tuned!